All right, welcome to Programming 101. So just a quick background. I came from a strength background. My dad was a high-level weightlifter, and that's how I got my start. I can remember the first time I really benefited from a program was I used my dad's 12-month strength training program that he used back in his day to get strong. And I went from barely being able to squat 100 pounds my freshman year to being able to easily do 225 a year later, which at the time was a very big increase. And then that led me to getting really into weightlifting with football. And then I got into mixed martial arts, and that opened my eyes to a lot of functional training, right? Like burpees and tire flips and sledgehammers and saddlebags and things like that. And then I got into CrossFit, and that opened my eyes to gymnastics and more Olympic weightlifting. And then from there, calisthenics. And really now it's a mix of all of it. And so I'm going to share with you 6 key concepts that I use and that I think through every single time I program for myself or someone else. Number 1, and really these first few are more concepts. So we're going to start by zooming out and then end by zooming in and getting very specific and tactical. So number 1, a really key concept is the long game belongs to those who master the basics. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, you see it a lot. People get way too wrapped up in getting super fancy, thinking they have to shock the muscles all the time. And all the while, they become a master of none. They really never spend long enough on particular movements to truly master them and to truly get everything out of them. If you look at a Muscle and Fitness from 1975 and one from today, you're going to see a lot of the same exercises. You may see different celebrities on the cover. The exercises may be in different order, but it's the same thing. So the long game belongs to those who can master the basics. The basics serve as your foundation. So we're going to get into what I mean by the basics here in a little bit, but just know you master the basics and then you add the frilly, fancy stuff here and there, but it always comes back to the basics. And an extension of that, a lot of people believe that once they master the basics, they are now too advanced for them, and they need to go on to more advanced things. There is a shred of truth to that, but I would actually argue the opposite is true. The more advanced you get, the more you get out of the basics. The reason why is every time as you climb up, as you get more and more advanced, every time you go back to the basics, you're coming back to them with a much deeper context. Way more context and a much deeper understanding. So you can get more out of them. That's something I have personally experienced. When I got my first pull-up, I didn't think, yay, I'm too advanced for pull-ups now. In fact, and then, as I got into weighted pull-ups, so I'm able to do my body weight plus some weight. Now I'm able to get more out of body weight pull-ups because they're easier. So I can focus on my shoulder motion. I can focus on the quality of my grip strength. I can slow them down and get even more out of them. That actually perfectly segues into the next concept, which is muscles don't know numbers. They just know intensity. I'm going to use an analogy that may seem really out of left field, but it makes sense to me. So the analogy is, if you look at a chimpanzee's body, I've always been fascinated by primates and how freakishly strong they are. And chimpanzees especially are jacked. Like, they have muscles on muscles. But let me ask you a question. When's the last time you saw a chimp do a bicep curl or even a workout in general? Never. So what is it? Is it just their genetics? Yeah, that's a part of it. But watch them move all day. What are they doing? They are constantly climbing and crawling around. They are using their bodies to literally get from A to B. So what do I mean? To me, that is proof that the muscles don't know if you're doing a neutral grip curl with cables or you're doing a supinated grip on the machines. The muscles just know intensity level. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is it's really easy to get sucked down some rabbit holes on, if you hold your hands at 37 degrees while you're doing curls, then that really hits the lateral head of your bicep. That none of that really matters at the end of the day. What matters is you are choosing exercises that do feel good to your body, because there is a shred of truth to that. Sometimes our anatomy doesn't agree with certain movements. Like a sumo squat would be a good example. Some people just can't comfortably squat with a wide stance. That's okay. Other than that, it doesn't matter. It's a game of identifying what movements you like to do, just like identifying what foods you like to eat. Because you'll be more likely to do those more and put more effort into them. And then it's understanding that as long as you are challenging your body, it will continue to grow. So that means sometimes you're doing heavyweight, sometimes you're doing lightweight, sometimes you're doing fast reps, sometimes you're doing very slow reps. As long as you are continuing to challenge your body, you will get to where you want to go. Number 3, I like to look at strength and conditioning not as separate entities, but more as just different places on a spectrum. What I mean by that is really depending on your goals. Sometimes you want to spend 6 to 12 weeks getting stronger. You feel weak, you want to build more muscle mass, maybe you are training for a powerlifting competition. So we lie more on the side of the spectrum of strength. But that doesn't mean we completely abandon our conditioning. Why? Because our heart and lungs, they're pretty important organs. So we need them. It just means that for the time being, you're doing more strength and a little bit less conditioning. Or maybe the opposite. Maybe you're trying to improve your endurance. Maybe you're trying to shed body fat. That doesn't mean that you go completely the other way and just do conditioning. Because as you may already know, or maybe you don't, to completely abandon strength training is to completely abandon building and maintaining lean muscle mass. And that, my friends, is the key to building a toned, fit body long term. And so it's not a question of, am I just doing strength or am I just doing conditioning? It's to what extent am I doing both? So if you are more on the endurance side, you still need to do strength training. Look at a high-level triathlete whose literal sport is endurance. They're absolutely still doing strength training. It's just that when they're in season, they're maybe doing 1 or 2 strength training sessions a week because they need to devote a lot of their volume and their time to their endurance. Whereas in the off season, they might dial back their endurance training a little bit and dial up their strength training. But see, they're never abandoning one or the other. And the cool thing is, again, like I said in the previous point, your body doesn't care. It just cares that it's getting challenged. It needs consistent reasons to grow and adapt. A lot of people are really afraid to dial back their strength training and increase their conditioning, even though they want more endurance, they want more body fat loss, they're afraid they're gonna lose their strength gains. And maybe in the short term, you might lose a little bit of strength, but you're gaining more conditioning. And it's just a game of increase the conditioning, strength may fall a little bit. Then you increase the strength, conditioning falls a little bit, but all the while, you are climbing up and up. So don't obsess about that too much and understand that at all times, you still need elements of both. All right, number 4, here's where we start to get really practical. So when I am programming, I am always thinking through the lens of the fact that every human being has several basic human movement needs. So if you look at whether you believe in God and that we're created or not, it's really hard to argue that shoulders have specific purposes. Hips have specific jobs. The spine, the core, every part of our body has certain mechanisms and ways that they're supposed to move. Don't believe me? Try squatting with your knees touching together. You don't need to know a thing about anatomy, physiology, or exercise to know that something feels off there. Why? It's because they're not moving the way they're designed to move. And so what I am thinking through, and the reason I use this as a checklist, is I want to make sure that nothing gets neglected. Because when, for example, we stop lifting overhead, we are abandoning a very important process of the shoulder. And that's how imbalances and eventual injuries can happen. So we just want to make sure that while you might have a bias towards certain movements more than the other, that we're never leaving anything on the table. So here is the basic movement checklist as far as I see it. Number 1, we need to push things. So that's things like push-ups, dips, overhead press. It doesn't really matter if it's a barbell, dumbbell, free weights, cables, machines. We just need to be pressing things in both planes of motion, both in the horizontal plane. So again, think push-ups and dips, and in the vertical plane, think like overhead presses, pike push-ups, handstand push-ups, things like that. And then the opposite of that is we need to be pulling things. So in the horizontal plane, we're looking at row variations. In the vertical plane, we're looking at things like lat pull downs and pull-ups. There's a lot of little nuance and variations you can throw in there, but basically that's what our upper body needs. With the lower body, we need to hinge. That means we are doing things like deadlifts, where most of the action is coming from the hips. Deadlifts, kettlebell swings, kettlebell cleans, snatches, even hip bridges, glute bridges. We need to be working what's called the posterior chain, which, if you're not familiar, that's your hamstrings, your glutes, your spinal erectors. Think about how you pick something up off the ground. You just performed a hinging movement, and the inability to hinge is usually where a lot of our lower back and knee issues come from. So we need to hinge. In terms of the core, there's essentially two jobs. One you probably know well, one you may not know as well. So the first job of the core, the one that you probably know, is to brace. Think things like planking, any kind of planking movement, or farmer's carries where you are carrying heavy weights in the rack position or down at your sides. Basically, you are resisting movement in your spine. You're teaching your core how to keep your spine in the same place. Very applicable for when you are heavy lifting, right? Because you don't want your spine moving around when you're picking up your friend's couch. But to only have bracing and not have the other job spells a lot of trouble for your spine and your core. The other job is articulation, which is just the opposite of bracing. You are teaching your core how to articulate and segment your spine. A quick illustration on this. There's 24 vertebrae in the spine. If you were to put 100 pounds on top of that spine, and that was a perfectly functioning spine, you would have just over 4 pounds equally displaced between each segment. So everything is working together. The problem is most of us move like we have 3 segments. We have very stiff spines, particularly in the upper back and the lower back. And so now you have over 30 pounds on just 3 areas of your spine. You can imagine how those 3 areas will get very overworked very quickly. So we need to teach the spine how to move properly, to mitigate load, but also to prepare for the non-linear positions we're going to be in life. You're not always picking your kid up perfectly. Sometimes you're bent over one leg. Sometimes you're crawling into a car, changing your oil. Like, we need to be more pliable. We also need to rotate, because the gym and traditional exercises have us in a very linear, or what's called the sagittal plane of motion, okay? We also need to be moving into the frontal plane of motion, side to side. So think things like side lunges, skaters, where you're hopping side to side, but also rotation. So that could be things like, the most basic example is like an oblique twist with cables or bands. We need to teach the body how to rotate, because we rotate in life, especially if you're an athlete. You're kicking a ball, you're throwing a punch. That's rotation. And then we also need to get out of breath. Like I said before, the heart and lungs are 2 very important organs. We need them at their best. And so we need to get out of breath. But the cool thing is, you don't just need to be on the treadmill, the elliptical, or the rower to get out of breath. There are many other ways to get both your strength and your conditioning in the same go. And that actually leads me into the next point, the 5th point, which is I wanted to share some common formats that I use. So I'm just going to list them, and then I'll tell you why I use them. So number 1, and I use this one all the time, it's called supersets. Supersets is when you take any 2 exercises and you pair them back to back, and you do them with little to no rest in between, or sometimes longer rest, and it really depends on the application. The reasons, because there's multiple reasons why I like supersets and I use them very heavily, is number 1, they're very space efficient. Now, I work out at home, so I don't have to worry about that. But if you're in a public gym, trying to take hold of 4 different pieces of equipment or machines, it's just not realistic. And so supersets help remove that barrier and enable you to use 1, maybe 2 pieces of equipment for your superset. Number 2, they're very time efficient. I don't know about you. I love fitness. I love working out. I don't love spending 3 hours doing it. I want to get in, get the most bang for my buck, and get out. So supersets do a great job of packing a lot of work into a short amount of time. And then number 3, and I can't say it's my favorite because I love everything about supersets, but one of my other favorite aspects of supersets is they combine strength and conditioning. Because like I said, you're doing 2 exercises back to back with little to no rest in between. You better believe, even if you're doing really basic movements, your heart rate's going to be picking up. And then if you're doing compound movements like, multiple joint, multiple muscle stuff like push-ups and squats and lunges, you're absolutely going to be getting out of breath. And the cool thing is, like I said before, on the strength conditioning spectrum, if you're using supersets more to build strength and muscle mass, you would just inject a little more rest in between. So for example, you'd be doing, if your goal is muscle building, you'd be doing 8 to 12 reps of one movement, rest 45 to 90 seconds, do 8 to 12 reps of the second movement, rest 45 to 90 seconds, and repeat for 3 to 4 sets. That's a very classic muscle building superset protocol. If you're trying to get more conditioning in, all you would do is just take the rest out. So you're resting anywhere from 0 to 15 seconds. You're gonna get out of breath a lot faster. Another format I use is called an EMOM. It's an acronym that stands for every minute on the minute. Basically, the way it works, it's a form of interval training. You have anywhere from 1 to, I would say, 5 to 6 exercises. Any more than that, in my opinion, it's just too many plates to spin. You can get great workouts in and not have to do 10 exercises to do it. So basically the way you do it is, let's say you have pull-ups, push-ups, and squats. Those are the 3 movements you picked. And let's say you're doing 10 repetitions of each, just to keep this example simple. When the first minute starts, you have a timer, and when the first minute starts, you're gonna do your 10 pull-ups. And let's say those pull-ups take you 25 seconds to do. That now means you have 35 seconds of rest, because your rest time is just however much of that minute is left. Once the second minute starts, you're gonna do 10 push-ups. Let's say those take you 20 seconds. You now have 40 seconds of rest. Once the third minute starts, you do your 10 squats. Again, let's say it takes you 30 seconds. You now have 30 seconds of rest. And then you just rinse and repeat. A couple things I really love about EMOMs is honestly the same things I love about supersets. They're very equipment efficient, time efficient, space efficient. I would say the one way EMOMs are even more time efficient is you know exactly how long the workout's gonna take, which is really handy when you find yourself thinking, I only have 20 minutes to work out. Well, you do a 5-minute warm-up, you do that push-up, pull-up, squat workout, and you do 5 rounds of it. That totals 15 minutes plus the 5-minute warm-up. That's a 20-minute workout. So you can see how that removes a big barrier that a lot of us tend to put in our way, thinking I don't have an hour to work out, so I can't work out. You can absolutely have 20 minutes, and you would be amazed at how effective an EMOM is at giving you a great workout in a short amount of time. I use them very heavily. And then finally, and these aren't the only formats that I use, but these are the 3 most common ones that I use. The third one is another acronym. It's an AMRAP, stands for as many rounds or reps as possible. So with this one, you set a time, let's say 20 minutes, and then you pick, like the EMOM, anywhere from, I would say, 1 to 5 or 6 movements. And with this one, your rest time is just when you stop. And you do the circuit as many rounds or repetitions as you can until that 20 minutes, for example, expires. This is definitely more on the conditioning side of the spectrum because you're moving so continuously. Again, it's a great way to pack a lot of work into a short amount of time. It's especially great for if you're trying to get super sweaty and work on your conditioning. All right, last point. Thank you so much for sticking with me so long on this video. I hope this has been helpful so far. So we know that we have basic movement needs to fulfill. We have some formats to use. We know the basics work. We feel more equipped with choosing, do I want to work more on strength or conditioning? But what exercises do you do on what days? For me, this is largely dictated by your schedule, because the last thing you want is to, let's say you devote to chest day, back day, hamstring day, quad day, like split it up a lot, but then you're not consistently going to the gym. You'll find very quickly you're going to be neglecting parts of your body, and that's the kind of stuff that leads to imbalances and injuries. And so the reason I use the schedule to dictate how I split things up, partially anyway, is, let's say, for example, you can only make it to the gym 3 days a week. The 2 splits that I would use, and this really depends on the person, is either the same full body workout every time. This is especially applicable for really busy people or new people. Busy people because you don't have a lot of brain space when you're busy, do you? And having to wrap your mind around 3 separate workouts every single week can sometimes be a daunting task. Whereas when you're busy, a lot of times you just want to get in, get the workout in, and get out. And guys, you don't have to mix things up all the time, I promise you. Remember, your muscles just know intensity. They don't know numbers or shock in the body. So the same full body workout works really well for 3 days a week, or especially if you're trying to put on size, work on strength, maybe you have some mobility restrictions you want to work through. Another really effective split for 3 days a week is upper body, lower body, full body. So on day 1, upper body, as it sounds, you're doing all your upper body pushing, pulling, and some arm stuff at the end. Maybe some core. Lower body, you're doing all your lower body. So you're squatting, you're lunging, you're deadlifting, you're kettlebell swinging, glute bridging. I usually involve a lot more core on that day as well. And then full body, it can either be a full body strength day, or maybe we utilize supersets and we do an upper body strength movement into a lower body strength movement. And we pick 3 to 4 different pairs of exercises to do that with. Or it could be your conditioning day. upper body strength, lower body strength, full body conditioning, where you would use an EMOM or an AMRAP type format to get more conditioning. Again, it really doesn't matter that much. As long as you are continually making your body tired, challenging your muscles just enough to give them a reason to continue to grow and adapt. That's really all that matters. And let's say, though, you truly do have 5 or 6 days a week. That's where you could afford to split things up a little more. So like a really popular and effective split for 6 days a week, you would do push, pull, leg, push, pull, leg. So it's the same 3 workouts, just done twice. So push day, you're doing all your pushing exercises, right? Your push-ups, your dips, your bench press, your overhead press, your pike push-ups, things like that. Pull day, the exact opposite. Row variations, pull down variations, pull up variations. Legs, pretty straightforward. Your squats, lunges, deadlifts, hinges, things like that. And obviously you're sprinkling in core mobility into those. And then you just do those same 3 workouts twice. Guys, it really doesn't matter. And I liken it to like nutrition. With nutrition, there are absolutes we all need to stick to regardless of our preferences and our goals. We all need lean protein. We all need hydration. We all need fiber from things like fruits and vegetables, also micronutrients, vitamins, minerals from fruits and vegetables. How you consume them, when you consume them, what amounts, that is completely up to you, your preferences, your goals, your lifestyle. It's no different with exercise. As long as you are fulfilling those basic movement patterns every week and the results never lie, you're getting results, it really doesn't matter. So many people get hung up on obsessing about, oh, I need to do this exercise because, Hugh Jackman said this is what got him in shape for Wolverine. Like, we get so wrapped up in the silliest things. We major in the minors and minor in the majors. The majors are, we need to do resistance training at least 3 days a week. Unless, of course, you are in season for an endurance sport, then we would dial that back a little bit. So strength training at least 3 days a week and get out of breath at least 3 days a week. That doesn't necessarily mean 6 total workouts. Because like I said, you could do, with these 3 formats I shared, do both strength and conditioning in the same workout. Now, obviously, the more aggressive your goals are, the more room you're going to need to make in your week for more movement and more exercise. So this video is long enough. I hope that helps. I'm happy to do more volume, so let me know in the comments. I love this teaching side of coaching, so let me know if this was helpful. Let me know if you'd like to see more of this, and I'll see you for the next one.